It is postseason time in 7 of the 9 major winter leagues right now, and the other 2 leagues will be starting their postseason in just a couple weeks. So today I wanted to look at how postseason and postseason qualifying works in each country, compare them, point out the good and bad points, and how I would do it differently if I was in charge. Probably should have done this a few weeks ago, before the postseason started, but better late than never. One thing you'll notice with all winter leagues, differing from the summer leagues, is that more than half the teams in the league qualify for the postseason. You might think that a team finishing 4th out of 6 teams is unworthy of playing beyond the regular season, but remember that these leagues have anywhere from 4 to 10 teams, so if they limited the postseason to half or less of the teams in the league, oftentimes there would be no playoff at all, just a 2-team championship following the regular season, and that would make for less excitement. Let's start with Mexico's LMP. I start here for 3 reasons. 1, it's the biggest, with 10 teams. 2, they play the longest season, over 60 games. And 3, it has the most ridiculous system for postseason qualification. The first problem is that out of the 10 teams, 8 reach the postseason, way too many. Just like their summer league where 6 out of 9 in each zone qualify. In Mexico, for some reason they like to invite damn near everyone to the playoffs. The second problem is that they don't simply go by win-loss records, they use a split season format. Not a simple one like you saw in Taiwan where you have a first half champion and a second half champion and those two meet for the final series. No, in the LMP, teams earn points based on their position in each half, and even if their records are the same, no 2 teams earn the same number of points. These are the first half standings, numbers 5 through 8. As you can see here, 4 teams finished with a record of 17 and 18, but they all received a different number of points based on tiebreakers. The good thing about this is it creates a sense of urgency at mid-season and makes the games really count, as teams are fighting for position as they approach the mid-season mark. But it creates too big of a difference in points between 2 teams that finished with identical records. This is the top 4 of the first half standings. Those top 3 teams did not fare so well in second half, especially second place Mayos de Navajoa. Now here's the bottom 4 of the second half standings. Look at how bad Mayos did, 7 and 26, just awful. And this is the bottom half of the overall standings. Mayos were the worst, 2 games behind the next worst team, 6.5 behind the 8th place team. Next, look at the points. The top 5 pretty closely match the order that they finished in overall records. But now look at the bottom. Mayos, because of their second place finish in the first half, were awarded the number 7 seed, despite having the worst overall record. Aguilas had the 7th best record, but they were seeded 8th. Yaquis had the 8th best record, but they missed the playoffs. The playoffs work like you'd expect them to. 8 teams meet in the quarterfinals, 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, etc. Higher seed gets home field advantage. All rounds are best of 7. Nothing wrong with how that's done. Just too many teams, that's all. 6 teams for the playoffs seems like a good number. Top 2 seeds get a bye and go straight to the semifinals. Sound familiar? And get rid of the split season and the point system. Just go by overall record. We'd miss that mid-season excitement when the first half is coming to a close, but it's not that long of a season anyway, and you want to make sure the worst team doesn't get in. The next few leagues we'll look at use a postseason round robin, so it's actually like a postseason, like a second season, shorter than the first and with fewer teams. I like this because it means teams can't just earn a high seed by beating up on the worst teams. We see in the summer leagues how some teams will get off to a good start, but when you really look at what they've done, you see that they've been nearly perfect against the worst teams, then struggle against the better teams. Eventually that catches up with them and they miss the postseason in the end. But the Winter League seasons are so short that a team can earn a 3rd place finish just by doing their best against the league's worst. There's not enough time for it to catch up to them. With a round-robin postseason, we see how each of the qualified teams perform against the other qualified teams. No more beating up on the weakling. You have to win against a more elite competition. In the Dominican League, Lidom, 6 teams play a 50-game schedule. 4 of the 6 reach the round-robin stage. Here we see this year's standings. The top 4 moved on, while Aguilas and Toros went home. In past years, they've had a playoff series between the number 4 and number 5 teams, when they were really close in the end. But the last 2 years, they deemed it unnecessary. That's another good thing. Use some common sense. If they're close, let them play one more time, giving a ghost win to the number 4 seed. Make sure you're putting the very best team in there. If they're not close, it's not necessary. Number 4 obviously deserves it, as was the case this year. The top 2 from the round robin then meet for a best-of-7 championship series. The only thing I don't like is that the 4 teams all start out with a clean slate in the round robin, as if nothing happened in the first 50 games. We see here that Gigantes topped the standings at 9 games over 500, while Tigres grabbed the last spot, right at 500. But when the round robin started, they all had 0 wins and 0 losses. If it were up to me, the 18-game round robin would start with the top seed getting a ghost win versus the other 3 postseason teams. Number 1 team would start 3-0, number 2 team starts 2-1, number 3 1-2, and the number 4 team starts with a record of 0-3. They play 18 games, so there's enough time to make up for it. But the lower you finish in the standings, the harder it's going to be, making your position in the regular season standings actually mean something. If 3 ghost wins seems like too much of an advantage, maybe they could just give more home games to the higher seed. They play each other team 6 times. Instead of an even 3-3 split like they do now, maybe give the higher seed 4 games at home and 2 on the road. Venezuela's LVBP has 8 teams playing a 56-game schedule. Same system except that it's a 5-team round robin, 16 games, little less than Lido. They also have a playoff series for the final spot between the number 5 and number 6 teams. Only difference is they hold this series no matter what. This is the bottom half of the standings this season. Aragua was number 5 in the end. Zulia and Magallanes were tied for 6th place. Both teams 5 games behind 5th place Aragua. So Zulia and Magallanes played 1 extra game. That was won by Zulia, and they went on to play Aragua in a best of 3 for the last spot in the round robin. They should have just made a judgment call and said that Aragua was obviously the top 5 team. They were only half a game out of 4th. After the 56-game regular season schedule, Zulia and Magallanes should have been sent home. Nicaragua's LBPN has just 5 teams playing a 32-game regular season schedule. Once the regular season is done, the worst team is eliminated. The top 4 move on and play a 12-game round robin, and the best 2 from the round robin meet in the final series. Same system as Lidom, but with a shorter round robin. The system works pretty well. Again, I don't like the idea of every team starting off with the same record when the postseason begins. Ghost wins or more home games to the higher seeds, and it'll be perfect. The next few leagues I'll talk about don't use the round robin. Instead, the qualified teams meet in a semifinal round. Puerto Rico's LBPRC and the Cuban Elite League are identical. 6 teams playing a 40-game schedule. Top 4 reach the semifinals. 5 and 6 teams are done at the end of the regular season. Semifinals and finals are best of 7. Home field advantage to the higher seed. Australia's ABL is almost the same. 6 teams, 40-game schedule, 4 reach the semis. Only difference is they play best of 3 playoff series. All 3 of these leagues start in November, whereas the leagues of the Dominican Republic and Venezuela start in October. If they're going to play a 40-game schedule in Cuba, Puerto Rico, and Australia, they don't have enough time for a round robin. Given that situation, I think they're doing it right. 4 out of 6 is the right number. Higher seeds do get an advantage with more games at home. Now we look at the smaller leagues. Colombia's LPB has only 4 teams playing a 42-game schedule. The way it's usually done is, the 4th place team is eliminated, of course. The 1st place team goes straight to the championship series. Numbers 2 and 3 battle it out in the semifinal round. Winner goes to the final series. But this year was different. Look at the final standings, you can see that there was a clear line between the 2nd and 3rd place teams. Leones and Tigres were tied for last, 2 games behind 2nd place Vaqueros. So the league used some common sense and sent the 2 last place teams home. No semifinals, top 2 go straight to the final series. Makes sense. If they went ahead with a semifinal round, either by tiebreaker or holding a play-in game, you run the risk of a team finishing last in the regular season, then going on to win the title, which is just silly. Then there's Panama. Last year they did it just like Colombia. They had 4 teams playing a 21-game schedule. Top team at the end earned a trip to the final series. 2nd and 3rd place teams met in the semifinals. But this year they're down to just 3 teams. They started their season on January 2nd and will end it all before January is over. When the regular season is over, the worst team is out. The top 2 meet in the final series. With only 3 teams, it's hard to imagine it being done any other way. Maybe they'll come up with something more permanent when they get some stability in the league. Last year they had 4 teams. 2 years ago it was 3 teams. 3 years ago their season was canceled. And that is how it's done in the Winter League postseasons. Some I think are done just right. Some could use a little change. And one could use a big change. Let me know what you would change about them, or if you think everything is fine the way it is. And if you didn't know how the postseason worked in all the winter leagues, now you do. So tune in and enjoy. Colombian Championship is just wrapping up now. Nicaragua will start their final series in a few days. Puerto Rico will start soon. Mexico is in the quarterfinals. Cuba is in the semifinals. Dominican Republic and Venezuela are in the round-robin stage. Semis in Australia start in a couple weeks. Anyway, that's all for this one. Until next time, this is Baseball International. See ya.